Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Bridging the Great Return, a Team Experience. Today's session is part of a webinar series hosted by Human Synergistics. The past few years have been such an unprecedented experience for all of us. Most organizations had to pause and quickly adjust the way they did business and essentially move into triage mode as so much uncertainty was faced. We are now in this unique state of needing to address the question of how do we return to work? What does it look like? And most importantly, how do we move forward and consider our people? Today's session is focused on an amazing organization who faced the Great Return head on. As a quick reminder, today's webinar will be recorded and we will make the recording and the PowerPoint presentation available to you within the next few days. We also encourage you to send through any questions using the Q&A feature in your GoToWebinar panel. We will be able to address these questions towards the end of the session. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today's session. Lauren Smith is Chief Operations Officer and co-founder of Veterans Benefits Guide, a Josh Co. company. In 2015, Lauren and husband Josh, a service-disabled Marine Corps veteran, started VBG with a common purpose and passion for helping veterans. In 7 years, they grew Veteran Benefits Guide from a side hustle in their San Diego garage to a multi-million-dollar enterprise and relocated their headquarters to Las Vegas, where they now employ more than 140 staff members and are proud to have successfully guided over 20,000 veterans nationwide with their disability claims resulting in $2.5 billion in increased benefits to veterans. Just amazing. And Dave Wheelock is a seasoned consultant specializing in helping organizations build and nurture effective teams and work groups. He owns the consultancy Into the Blue Consulting that conducts team building and workshops around people skills and event facilitation for a wide variety of civic groups, corporations, schools, and industries. Experienced in the fields of education, construction, financial services, energy, healthcare, and agriculture, Dave has been working with Human Synergistics materials and tools for more than 20 years. And I've had the pleasure of knowing him, I would say about 10 of those years, and it's just been a pleasure working with him. Lastly, I am Allison Beautiful. I'm Director of Culture and Leadership here at Human Synergistics, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Before we dive in, we mentioned that Veterans Benefits Guide is based in Las Vegas these days, and wanted to share this visual. Now, when we typically think of Las Vegas, we see the crowded strip, there's lots of people, just kind of chaos, I would say, for the most part. Lots of cars, the huge casinos, the shows, just an energy around the clock. So this is our normal Vegas. Now here's 2022 Las Vegas. Quite a different scenario. You don't see any of that hustle and bustle that you see for the most part year round. It's empty, void of cars, crowds, closed casinos, in a much different environment in such uncertainty at this time. So just what a crazy time. And Dave, I know you were experiencing this as a consultant. Can you share more around your experiences?
Yes, and thank you for the invite, and welcome to everyone that's here and listening in on this webinar. To those of you who work on the tools and research, we appreciate you, and those who are involved in human relations and working with our people, we appreciate you as well. And to my fellow practitioners and facilitators, I especially welcome you and hope you enjoy at least listening to what we have to present to you today. As we all strive to educate our organizations and help facilitate events like the one we're going to talk about today, workshops, forums, training meetings, webinars like this, we try not to avoid obvious issues and problems. and we don't skim over them or ignore them. I think ignoring obvious problems in a training situation is not a good way to move forward and to help organizations. And the events of the last 2 years have produced numerous issues for our clients and for businesses in general. And we're going to highlight one of those issues this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you are. And maybe the major issue in some people's minds, and that is how to, quote, return to work after a worldwide pandemic. And today we're going to specifically look at one organization's efforts to reconvene their people in a training event that was like a celebration, really. And by the way, a few of the slides will be coming up that we used in our event here in a minute. But in terms of the workplace in 2020, 2021, 2022 even still, we're kind of in a Raising Arizona style world. And I don't know how familiar with Raising Arizona you are. It's kind of a cult movie, came out in the late 80s, starred Nicolas Cage. It's a movie that's so preposterous that it's actually funny, but it's about a man who's trying to, quote, get back to normal. He's trying to find normal. He doesn't know what it is because he's lived a life where he's been on the wrong side of the law. He has interesting ideas about work and about experience and things like that. And the movie's backdrop theme really is views of work, of job opportunities, of careers, of what's normal, and catches our character up in a confused jumble of uncertainty. And the line from the movie that I think is my favorite is after he loses his job and he's out of work, which may not depress some people in the last 2 years, the advice he gets from two career criminals, one of them says, well, you're young, you have your health, what do you want with a job? The whole world is topsy-turvy. If you haven't seen the movie, watch it. But that's the kind of world we live in. And you may all remember what, quote, normal was like before March of 2020. I remember doing a leadership in-person training event on March 11th, 2020. And then a week later, everything was shut down. And since I have numerous business clients, especially in the agricultural field, I saw firsthand really the effects that the pandemic had on the business community, the mandates and other things, social distancing, closing of businesses. And we were all learning how to proceed and exactly when that was going to happen, when we were going to be able to. We've had several false starts, and it created a lot of uncertainty amongst the business community. In fact, fear and uncertainty are perhaps the two biggest hurdles to overcome in getting our groups and our teams and our organizations back on the path to return. As live events started up again, and my first in-person return to facilitation was on May 19th, 2021. It was a long, lonely 14 months just staring at Zoom meetings and other things that we had to do. And even in May of 2021, none of us really knew how return to normal was going to look. But at least for me, I made a decision that I was not going to ignore it. The pandemic, that is, the fear, the uncertainty, that we were going to talk about it in our groups, in our training sessions, in our events, and what it may have taught us. Experts say that it takes 21 straight days to develop a habit, whether that habit is good or bad. Well, in our society and our work world, many people have stayed home for 2 years, not 21 days, but 2 years. So we have definitely learned some things. Possibly some are good things, maybe some are not so good. And we've certainly had to adjust our thinking, and probably we think differently than we did 2 years ago. So what are some of the things that we can expect as we try to come back to work, try to come back to the office, try to, quote, get back to normal. Today, we're going to highlight the efforts of one company to reconvene their teams and specifically their event in December of 2021 that I facilitated and was a privilege to be a part of. As I started doing live in-person trainings during the middle of last year, I kept seeing sort of the same thing over and over again. This increased interest in moving forward, even though people may not have known exactly how it was going to be done. And I saw this in many different organizations from all different types of business models in service industries, in sales, in education, in agriculture. And as part of this discussion of thinking differently, we try not to ignore it. For example, one phrase that we have all habitually been saying over the last couple of years is stay safe. You stay safe. That's how we end our visit with someone. We tell them to stay safe. And if you're saying that and you still say that, I'm not telling you not to say it anymore. I'm just saying that the truth is that risks have to be taken. And anyone who starts or operates a business, all our clients that we work with, they take a risk. You practitioners and facilitators that are on this webinar today, you're putting yourself out there. That is a risk. You're constantly taking a risk. People like our guest today, her and her husband took a risk when they started their company. And of course, no one should be careless and needlessly risk their health or anything like that. But I'm wondering if this phrase stay safe has had a negative impact on some of the things we do, that's all we think about, that now we can't take risks. I've had the privilege of getting to know several NASA astronauts and doing a little back and forth with NASA. And I attended a space shuttle launch a few years ago. But imagine locking these 7 astronauts on the space shuttle, and what they're about to do is so risky that everyone gets 2 or 3 miles away while they blast off into space. And the last thing we say to them before we lock them in the capsule is stay safe. So openly discussing the ramifications and learned behaviors of the pandemic does not have to be a political discussion. In fact, I would recommend against that highly. It's a practical discussion. It's a necessary discussion. And I believe it's a transforming and even a healing discussion to have. Frankly, getting back together in person in live training environments is the beginning of those transformations and healings. And I felt this during the second half of 2021. The live event we're highlighting today occurred in early December 2021. I do not want to steal any thunder from Lauren Smith, and I want her to share her passion for the work that her company does. Let me just say this. I've been working with this company since 2018, and when we scheduled this event at her request, it appeared that we would have 3 or 4 times as many participants than we had in March of 2019, the last time we were together. This company has undergone dynamic growth, and having all their personnel spend 2 days together last December was an inspirational thing to witness, and I was proud to be a part of it. Lauren will give us some testimony here on the measurable benefits to her people spending those 2 days together, but I can say that the energy in the room during our team building event was really hard to describe. So at this point, I'd like to introduce the Chief Operating Officer, Veteran Benefits Guide, Lauren Smith.
Thank you, Dave. And I want to say thank you to the Human Synergistics team for the invite today to discuss this very relevant and trending topic. Veteran Benefits Guide serves veterans. Here you see our website. We consider ourselves the disruptor to the legacy claims process through the VA. We started our business out of our garage, my husband and myself, in 2015. And today we have over 150 employees. We have 2 locations, one in California, one here in Nevada and Las Vegas. And we serve veterans in all 50 states. In the fall of 2019, we opened up our headquarters here in Las Vegas. We have a space now that is about 20,000 square feet. And at 2020, the beginning of 2020, we had about 90 employees, and we were humming along, enjoying rapid growth. And then March 15th, 2020 hit, and we can all appreciate what impact that had. The next image we're going to show you, you probably relate to. Here you see a tumbleweed in the desert. I live in the desert, so this image is familiar to me. Allison early on showed us the picture of an empty Las Vegas Strip. No, that photo is not photoshopped. That was a real feeling here and on the Las Vegas Boulevard Strip. Completely empty. You could ride down the middle of Las Vegas Boulevard in your bicycle and you would have a peaceful ride. We can all look at this picture, I think, and think about our own tumbleweeds at that time in March of 2020. And any business owners joining us today, I'm sure, could think back to the scramble we had to do to figure out what do we do, while keeping a calm face and attitude with our employees and sort of keeping the anxiety at bay. On March 15th, 2020, Veteran Benefits Guide went full remote. We sent everybody home with a laptop. We figured it out. And fortunately for us, our business is recession proof, and we found out that it was pandemic proof as well. We continue to grow. Between January and September of 2020, we had a 56% increase in headcount. By mid 2021, most of our employees had never met face-to-face. They were familiar with the 2-dimensional versions of their coworkers over Zoom, but never spent time in the same room. And so, as Dave mentioned, we had increasing interest through 2021 to bring our group together again so that we could think about the next phase of return to office. As owners, Josh and I always had the attitude of, we're not going to rush back. The safety and well-being of our employees are top priority to us. And so we took it month by month. We paid attention to the news, to CDC recommendations, and played it by ear, like most of us did. And I contacted Dave and told him, I think we're ready for another team building. We had several successful events with Human Synergistics in the past. In 2018, we had 30 people attend our first team building event in San Diego. And then we had a second team building event in March 2018 with 40 people. This time we had 130 people by the fall of 2021. And what we decided to do is we were going to make it a mandatory in-person team building event in Las Vegas. We were going to bring our San Diego employees, which at that time was about 40 people, to Las Vegas, and we were going to combine it with an optional holiday party for the entire company the next day on Saturday. So we had the team building on Friday, the party on Saturday. We flew everybody in. We put them up. We decided to go with the Cosmopolitan Hotel here on Las Vegas Boulevard. It's a beautiful hotel and casino. And we also had convention space there for the team building. Again, we had about 130 employees attend the team building. We held it from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. On a Friday, we took an hour to enjoy lunch together. We had a catered lunch. And at the beginning, I also took the time to make sure that I thanked the employees for being there, for all their hard work during the pandemic, acknowledging the milestones we had hit, the growth. We took a few minutes to introduce the C-suite by name and had them stand up, say a few things so they could get to know them on a personal level. And then we also gave out a swag bag at the end, which was really fun. We wanted to give the employees the sense that this event was about them, and it was about bringing us all together again to prepare us to come back to office in the near future. And I'm going to let Dave take it at this point and give you a few more details about that day.
Thank you. So 130 people in one room. Well, as a facilitator, a practitioner, what do you do with that? Well, one good thing you can do with that is go to the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. That's a good place to have 130 people. So that's where the event was held. And here's a shot of the group as we convened and as they were working on their circumplexes, which we'll talk about in just a second. But 130 attendees in one room is a challenge for one facilitator. I had a few helpers that helped me that day, but I was the lone facilitator. So how do you keep everyone engaged? And is it really like herding cats? Is it difficult to keep all those people working? I think these people wanted to be together so badly that the engagement was totally inspirational to me. And we, of course, made it fun. We made it interesting for them. We had an interesting way of dividing up their teams at random. We had a total of 16 teams of 8 people working on a survival simulation, and then the resulting group styles inventory, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. We considered doing the digital scoring, and we actually looked pretty closely into that. We weighed the cost. The problem being is that the Cosmo charges so much to have everybody wired on internet that it really was going to take away from some of the viability. And so we didn't go with that, and we hand scored everything. And as we did that, it suddenly became very apparent to me that getting these people involved, even in math problems and art projects, was really, they wanted to do that. They wanted to be engaged. And I actually think digital scoring and things like that would have actually taken away from them. The next slide, I think, shows, the engagement that all the people had. You see everybody smiling there. And this is while they're scoring their simulation. And so, I don't know, most people don't enjoy math as much as it seems these people are, but really the engagement in the room was incredible. So the tools that we used for this facilitation event were the desert survival simulation and the group styles inventory. And in these two tools, we took a fair amount of time introducing the desert survival situation to them by going over the different behaviors that we find in a workplace environment. And you're talking to people who have only had to look at a person's face on a screen for several months, over a year, going on a year and a half. And so having to interact with people, there are certain behaviors, body language, things like that you don't get away with, that like you do, when you're on Zoom, you don't get away with it in person. So we talked about those and reviewed all those, and we reviewed personality and how people vary in their interest. And when we did the simulation, to say that they were into it would be an understatement. Everybody wanted to win. Everybody was working really hard on their problems, solving this survival situation. And when they were done, we went right into the GSI, had them take the survey. And there was a buzz in the room because we held off the scoring, most of the scoring, until after lunch. So at lunch, everybody was talking about, I'm sure our team beat your team, and I'm sure we work better together than you guys do. And it was just this friendly banter all around the room. So even lunch was was inspirational, and all the talking and the getting together. And I think that as we got to our takeaways, which we'll get to in a few minutes, it was obvious the benefit that had occurred in the room, that people were working together with smiles on their faces. They were totally engaged in the process. They were, you did not have to wonder if, there was a wallflower over in the corner, because there wasn't. I mean, you can just see by the quality of the art even on their GSI score sheets that they were totally into it. So people were engaged. I'm going to let Lauren talk a little bit more about how this event impacted the company and its people.
So I wanted to share a few photographs with everybody. This first photograph, you'll notice this group has an unusual stance, and that is because they are the coyote team, and they are howling and celebrating their teamwork. And so we have a shot of that. And we also have this image I wanted to share. This just shows the palpable positive energy, the teamwork, the participation, the effort, the collaboration that we saw all throughout that room that day. It was really neat to witness. And I also wanted to show this last photo. This is Dave, who is with us today, and this is our David on his left, our right. Our David is our HR, head of HR, and we, after this event, we transitioned the title of our human resources department to people operations. And so he is chief of people operations now. We wanted to make human resources more approachable, more friendly, more welcoming, and there is a strong partnership between human resources and operations, and so we had that transition after this event, and you can just see how engaged our David is in the process. He really enjoyed walking around the room and observing our team. I wanted to talk a little bit about why this is a success story and what the return on investment was for any business owner. That is really important if you're thinking about doing a team building event like this one. And I can tell you it was well worth the cost, and there was some risk involved. So as far as costs, we did fly in 40 people from San Diego. We accommodated them at the Cosmopolitan Hotel. We did provide food and beverage for that day. And so the cost was about $50,000. There were risks as well, COVID restrictions, spacing requirements, mask mandates, and other things that we were paying close attention to and considering coming up on this event. Here in Las Vegas, this event took place in early December, and it was fortunately right before the Omicron outbreak, and so we were a little lucky there in our planning, but we were very careful about the risks. We, as far as the return on investment, the months after this event, and again, this was in December of 21, so it's been almost 6 months since this event, we had a record-breaking Q1 in 2022. Our revenue went up 24% from Q4 2021. We had a record-breaking revenue just this past month in April. Our production metrics, we have a lot of metrics that we follow with our file movements. We broke records there. We changed the image, as I mentioned, of human resources to people operations, and that's worked really well. And we've seen an incredible improved morale with our staff after this event. There is continued enthusiasm for team building events. There's a desire for leadership development, and we wanted to generate that positive water cooler talk as people were coming back into the office. There's a spirit of transparency, which is also great. This next photo is our team photo. You can see the excitement in this photo as well. So what's next for Veteran Benefits Guide? Well, we're in the middle of our phased return to office now, and that's what we're talking about today. We began a phased return on May 2nd, and I'll talk a lot about that in a few minutes and share some details and some ideas. Our target completion for return to office is June 30th, so we're right in the middle of that process. We're approaching it very similarly as we did the team building. We want it to be about the employees. We want to consider their comfort, their level of anxiety. We want to address those fears and anxieties head on by encouraging this topic of conversation. Let's have a conversation about it. And again, I'll give more details in a few minutes. We're continuing to hire. At the time of this team building, we had about 130 employees. We now are inching our way to 160. When I checked this morning, seems we're making offers every day, but we have 156 employees now. We are projected to increase operations and operations staff by 33% this year. And we are working on establishing new departments and positions. We are working on growing a new service line as well, involving medical opinion letters and more benefits to the veterans we serve. And our projections for revenue growth are quite substantial for this year. I wanted to share the takeaways. I mentioned we're returning to office, and I felt that this team building event really laid the foundation for that. Again, we were taking our return to office approach was month by month, paying attention to recommendations, the news. We used a phrase over and over again with our staff that we would not be the first one back. We were going to pay attention to what other businesses were doing, and the safety and health of our employees was top priority. We addressed this in a phased approach. We didn't want 150 employees to come back on the same day. That would have been logistically very difficult to do, especially for IT, our team, our supervisors, our managers, our team leads to manage that. So we are doing a phased approach, 10 to 15 people per week. And this allows, it's not only an easier transition, it also allows that individual attention and focus to, again, address those anxiety and fears if there are any. There's a hybrid schedule we rolled out by department. And so some of our departments who are not client-facing, veteran-facing, we've allowed to remain fully remote, and that's worked out very well. And for the rest of the departments that are client-facing, we have a hybrid schedule where they come in 3 days a week and they can work remotely 2 days a week. That flexibility we have found is really important and highly desirable in today's market with all the changes that have taken place since the outbreak and shutdown in March 2020. We developed extra remote options for our higher producers. So we have something that is called the Qualified Individual Contributor Program. And so our operations staff, if they are exceeding the production metrics, then they're given the option to work remotely full-time. And I'm told by many different employees just in the last week that they really appreciate the little things. And so what are those little things? I wanted to leave any business owners that are on the line today maybe some ideas that you can use in your business as well. But just the simplicity of, we had groups report at 8 a.m. on a Monday, and the managers and supervisors standing there in the lobby to greet them and to clap them in and cheer for them, and that was a big hit. On that first day back, we bought lunch for everybody. So just a simple pizza party, but it brought everybody together in the break room. It allowed some ice-breaking action to happen where people are talking and getting to know each other. We also framed and hung signs outside of each cubicle with the person's name and title, and this allowed everyone to be more comfortable walking around, learning names to faces, and it makes it a lot easier. Even for me as an owner, there were many that I hadn't met in person yet, so it was easier for me personally to get to know people's names that way. And it also made the employees feel like, this is my spot, this is my home, I can, decorate it, I can make it my own. We also handed out some company swag. So we had new polos made up, we handed out polo shirts, among other things. And most importantly, I think, return to office and this new transition, this is new for everybody, and we want to make this a topic of conversation, regular check-ins with supervisors. Finally, I just wanted to leave you with this story. There's a younger manager in our company who, before the team building event, was struggling. He had a lot of potential, but he was young in his career and struggled with communication a little bit and managing his team effectively. And after the team building event, he spoke to me personally and privately in my office and said that he did a lot of self-reflection after the event. He was actually really surprised by his circumflex. He was really surprised to see a lot of green, and he wanted to make changes. And in the month following, we've seen a vast improvement in his performance, and his team is doing very well and in fact is growing and taking on more work. So he, amongst others at Veteran Benefits Guide, they have seen the investment that we've made in them and developing them as leaders, and they're reciprocating with engagement with and enthusiasm for and loyalty to VPG and our mission to helping as many veterans as we can, and that's all I could ask for. So now I'll turn it over to Dave for his key takeaways.
So I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of brief comments before I throw it back to Allison, and I think we have some time if you have questions for either Lauren or I. And I'm so touched to hear the story about the young manager whose really direction was changed. I had several people come up to me after this event in December, and this one young woman who I'll never forget just was fighting back tears and said, I really needed this. I really needed this, not just for work. I needed it for work, but I needed it for me and for everyone around me. And that's the kind of inspirational thing you hear as a facilitator that you don't soon forget, and it makes all the efforts worth it. We did focus right from the beginning on this event on behaviors, and I'll just close with these thoughts. It's not always what we say because that's what we do on Zoom meetings. We can see our faces, but we say things. But it's our behaviors that really drive whether we have successful results, constructive results, or the opposite. And we really focused on that from the very beginning in this event. And we talked about collaboration and consensus and consulting one another and how to use our behaviors as a strength, as a tool, as a weapon to get to satisfactory solutions in all the problems. I don't know all the inner workings of Lauren's company, but I do know that they face many, many issues each day trying to help veterans get their benefits. There's a lot of roadblocks. There's a lot of mountains that they have to climb. And it's our behavior and our consultative advice that are going to help us. And I really think that the employees, those who were actively engaged in this event, really took that away. That the best practices for them as a participant was to adjust where they needed to adjust and to get to learn their teammates and how to work better with them. And that's really our job as facilitators, is to, when working with teams, to get them to build that trust, to take away fear and uncertainty and get greater cohesiveness with them. So I really felt like this was a big takeaway to hear Lauren recite these numbers and the return on investment. Really warms my heart to hear that. So at this time, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity for letting us highlight this event. And I'm going to turn it back over to Allison, and she will, I guess, take it from here and let us know if we have any questions or where we're going to go from this point.
Wow, thank you so much to both of you, Lauren and Dave, for sharing your experiences and seeing the energy. I wish I could have been in that room. Just what a powerful experience, and to hear the lasting impact and the continued work that you're doing at Veteran Benefits Guide. It's truly inspiring. So a few questions have come in, so I want to make sure that we can address those. One question, you've spoken, Lauren, to what you're doing now, and just if you can share any more around, after having such a successful event, how you'll continue to keep that energy focused, and what's more to come.
More team building events. So, and we love the human synergistics model. It works very well with our team. They still talk about that first one, those that are still here from coming to that 2018 team building till now. They're still talking about it. And then we're also getting creative with other team building events. So as things are opening up, we're able to do more. So we have a baseball game scheduled in San Diego this coming July. We're definitely going to do another company holiday party. We're up for smaller events. We also get involved in our community as well to support veteran causes. For instance, last month we just had a 5K that we participated in here in Las Vegas and in San Diego for paralyzed veterans of America. So things like that.
Wow. It's amazing to hear the success that you've had and the growth and the revenue, but those people are the number one priority. And it's just so powerful to hear that you really have that balance and exude those constructive styles. So exciting. Also, how did you onboard the new staff to the culture of the organization when you were in that virtual environment? What gaps did you notice, if any, in their ability to fully embrace the most important norms of the culture?
So, like many of us know, there were so many adjustments we had to make during the shutdown. And so with hiring new staff, that was all done remote. And we're very protective of our culture. And so we do behavioral interviewing. And we not only dig into the person's skills and things that they bring to the table that way, but but also soft skills. You know, it's important to us to know that they're going to be a good fit in our culture and also have a passion for our mission and helping others.
Excellent. Dave, if you can speak to this one, the next question was, I imagine that your employees were highly motivated in part because of BBG's mission to help vets. What would you do with a similar sized company full of highly introverted specialists who lack a similar sense of mission?
I would not run away, although I would be tempted. No, not really. But I've actually had this situation before. I've done work for a large tech company. I'm not going to mention the name. I guess I'm not supposed to probably, but I've done a team building where they were joining teams together, but similar to Lauren's situation where she had 2 locations and the people had never, interacted with each other. I've done that also for tech companies. And, most of these people in the room were young people who like to stare at their devices and don't really, kind of use that as a substitute for actually interacting with one another. And it for sure is a challenge, but again, face it head on and just say, look, no matter what age we are, we can't just communicate by looking at a device. We have to actually look at a person. We have to work with them. They're our teammate. And so I try to motivate them in other ways. Obviously, when we had Lauren's crew in the room, I talked about several different motivational business owners like Fred Smith from FedEx, who was a decorated veteran from the Vietnam War, and just, kind of inspirational things like that. I do the same thing when I get introverts in the room. I tell them inspirational stories about how people started companies, yet they felt so shy and introverted that they were so uncomfortable talking to other people, yet they did it, and how important the communication is in a culture that's going to be constructive. Just because we have introverts in the room does not mean that we still don't collaborate and achieve and work with others and understand our own roles. We still have to do that. And so I might use other methods that kind of are geared to them, but have had that challenge, and it is a challenge. And you got to treat them where they're at.
For sure, for sure. I love those inspirational stories, and I've been a part of those in some of your facilitation. So thank you for bringing that up. Lauren, what was the driving factor or factors in returning to the office at all, as opposed to staying 100% virtual remote? Was there something in your operating culture of simply the voice of the employee, as you mentioned earlier?
Great question. I think the driver was there's a need for us to meet with our veterans face to face whenever we can. These veterans experience a lot of frustration in dealing with the VA, getting passed around on the phone. Just they need answers. And so if they can come in to meet with us in person, we want to be able to do that. That's one. And then of course productivity. We experienced a lot of growth during the shutdown, but we're pretty convinced that we can be even more successful and productive if a lot of us are back in office and have that focus.
Great. I know it's a tough decision that many are facing right now. Thanks for your insights there. Sorry, I missed it, but what was the team building simulation? Can you speak to that, Dave, again? What simulation you used and using your choice around using the paper in that experience?
Yeah, so we were somewhat forced into that a little bit because of the layout of the Cosmopolitan and the way it was going to work with needing the internet connectivity and things. We also had the time. If time is, the desert simulation has the opportunity to do the digital scoring and versus the paper. And if time is an issue, I think that would probably be the way to go. We had the time. We sought out the digital, priced it out, talked to the Cosmopolitan about it. It just seemed like it was just not gonna work. And so we thought, well, let's not go with that. Let's do the paper. And again, as I'm kind of repeating myself, but in hindsight, when we did the paper, we saw the interaction of these people, and they had fun with it. There was so much laughter and camaraderie and learning that was going on. I actually think in hindsight we might have lost something by going digital. Not that it's not good in some situations, I think it is and necessary. But I think in this situation, I think we might have lost something by going that route. So that's kind of how that worked out.
Yeah, and you saw that coming out of those photos too, with the getting creative and drawing the pictures and coloring their GSI circumplexes. So
Yeah,
mindful
for
of time,
sure.
we'll have one more question. Curious if you dealt with any employees who pushed back on the criteria of which roles could remain fully remote and which roles needed to return to the office. If so, how did you address it?
Yeah, so we contemplated that before rolling out the program. We really wanted to stay as flexible as we could. So I met with the director of operations, the president, and we really hashed this out. And what we ended up doing is we have 2 departments that do not have any face-to-face direct client interaction. That's underwriting and our quality assurance department. And so it was pretty easy for us to come to the conclusion that they do not need to be in office. We can allow them to stay remote. And those are pretty large groups, and I think included a lot of those folks who would have had a real issue coming back to office. So I think that alone kind of eliminated a lot of the issues. We also wanted to communicate our qualified individual contributor program to our case managers and intake specialists who have direct contact with our clients. We wanted them to know, hey, if you are performing at a high rate, you're meeting and exceeding your metrics, we want to reward you for that. And we have these extra options if you'd like to stay remote. What we've found is a handful of people who have had an issue, and by handful, I mean maybe 2 or 3 out of 150 people who decided it wasn't for them. And we wish them the best. The remaining staff, I think for the most part, has been really excited about the change, and we have tried to make it fun. And I think the key is just communication, talking about it again and again and again, and just making it an open topic and letting our folks know that if there is an issue with childcare, whatever it might be, your transportation, let us know. Let's see if we can work together to find a solution. So far, so good.
That's fantastic. And would just reiterate, communication is key. Absolutely. Well, one last question that came in, I saw, can you just briefly share the steps in the workshop to create the teams described earlier?
Okay, so I'll try to be as brief as possible because it can be complicated. But so I knew I was going to have about 130 to 135 people. I think we actually had 127 or 28 actually do the simulation. So I bought 2 or 3 decks of playing cards, divided everything into groups of 8, and had them randomly, just when they were done with their doing the simulation individually, because there's a section, of course, where they're working on the problem themselves. And when they're done, they come to a centrally located table with a bunch of face down cards, and they draw a card. And of course, you have 4 suits in each deck. You have several numbers, 1 through 13, I think, and just had them all divided up, whether they were diamonds, whether they were red, blue, red, black, and we put the team, we already gave them the names and just randomly put the cards up there. So all they had to do was report to a table. We had numbers on each of the 16 tables. So number 1 through 16. And so if you were holding between a 2 and a 9 black, what are the black clubs? If you were holding a clubs, you would report to that table. And that's how we divided up that many people with that many groups. So they had a lot of fun doing that.
That's a great way to do it randomly in the room rather than pre-assigning. They can see that they're randomly selected rather than they were strategically put in a certain group. So
That's
thanks
right.
for sharing that.
So we did, the only thing I want to change is I had enough decks of cards where actually we could put all the aces together on one team because I had 4 decks of cards.
Oh.
So that's how we did it. If you were an ace, you were with all the other aces. And so that's how we did it. All the other black aces, let's say, and red aces.
Got it. Well, great. I know we're a little over already, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Just want to say thank you again to Lauren and Dave for this fantastic presentation and sharing their learnings, takeaways around this team building experience and beyond, especially moving back into the workplace. So we thank you for this presentation and thank you to all the attendees for joining us. If there are any additional questions, be sure to reach out. And like I mentioned, we'll be providing this recording as well as the PowerPoint following the webinar. So thank you so much for being a part of today's presentation. Thank you, Dave and Lauren, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.